Hey, this is Mike D, and
This is Charles Woods.
you're tuned into another Reelblack podcast special edition. Charles, the big news this week, I wanted to avoid it, I wanted to ignore it. This Nate Parker thing, it's really taken hold here. You know, for those who've been not following, been doing other stuff, on the verge of the release of Birth of a Nation, which swept the awards at the Sundance Film Festival, received the highest amount ever for a movie acquired at Sundance, and was getting all the Oscar buzz. Now a huge scandal has come out regarding the background of Nate Parker, the star, writer, director, star of the film, producer, everything. And it involves the rape of a white woman that happened 17 years ago, where he and his and another friend, who happens to be the co-writer of Birth of a Nation, were accused when they were students at Penn State on the wrestling team of having sex with a white woman while she was intoxicated. And Nate Parker, he was acquitted, and John Celestin, his roommate at the time, served a total of 6 months in jail. This is something that they had hoped was in their past, but of course, when you're the man of the hour, you things like this are always going to come back up.
Well, you know what? Guess who's sitting right next to me?
Who's that?
Conspiracy brother.
Conspiracy brother. What's conspiracy brother got to
Conspiracy
say
brother.
about
Come
this?
here. What you got to say about this? Man, they knew this all the time, man. They had that vetted. They knew it all the time. He wanted to deal with Nat Turner. They know they ain't gonna let no Nat Turner come out there. So they had an ace in the hole, and this was the ace in the hole. They knew what this guy did, and they were gonna bring it out just when they were ready to bring this movie out. Thank you, Conspiracy brother.
Well, yeah. Well, the Akashic Records remembers everything. Everything you do is being recorded, and this is a big one. This is something that's going to be really difficult. So I guess the question of today is is it well, first off,
Just look. Tiger Woods was close to the record. What happened to Tiger Woods?
he got in a fight with his wife.
Larry Holmes was close to the record. What happened to Larry Holmes?
I don't know, conspiracy brother, tell me.
Every time a brother gets close to some record, something happens. And then when Babe Ruth's record was broken by Hank Aaron, they had an asterisk. They said that's not legit. And Muhammad Ali, who said he was the greatest, well, they were going to make sure he wasn't the greatest. They had him fighting a computer just so who was the unbeaten champ, white champ, could beat him on the computer fight.
Oh, Rocky
Marciano.
Well, we're going to have a very special guest calling in a minute, but I guess looking at both sides of the story now, obviously in these type of cases, it is a he said, she said type situation. Nate Parker, he holds to this day that it was consensual, purely consensual sex. The woman says that she was drunk and she did not consent. And there's a transcript of a tape recording that the woman made, where she tries to get Nate to find out who the other person was. I guess the real crime was that he invited his friend in to have the sex with him. Like, she wasn't consenting to that, certainly was not consenting to that, but in his mind, he feels like that's what it was all about. These things happen more often than not in colleges, and this was created quite a controversy at the time at Penn State because it was two black wrestling jocks accused of having non-consensual sex with a white woman on a predominantly white campus.
And I'm not making fun. I'm not making light of this.
Mm-hmm.
But here's something from this day forward. Anyone in this situation, they need to make this connection. You see all these commercials? You can't drink and drive, right?
Hmm.
You can't even drink. You can't even be buzzed and drive.
Right.
Well, let men and women know when it comes to the sex drive. When it comes to drinking, no sex drive.
Well, I mean, clearly, I mean, this kind of thing happens all the time on college campuses, and it's unfortunate that Nate Parker was caught up in it. What's even more sad is that it really this incident destroyed the woman's life. You know,
Mm.
it was reported later, recently, that you know, when people were trying to track down the woman to get her side of the story, she had committed suicide several years ago. You know, her life took a huge downturn after this. So I guess the question is, you know, can you separate this type of action, you know, knowing this about Nate Parker from his art? You know, can you look at his work differently? Will you look at his work differently, or can you separate it? Um, you know, what are the consequences when it comes to the Oscar race? Uh, you know, when this type of information comes out, and you know, is this just hearsay? Really, you know, is this something that if it wasn't for his race, would have been just have completely disappeared? You know, where it's kind of ironic that this would be coming out at this time, and you know, I think the gods are at work. To be honest with you, you know, I think this is karma coming back to get Nate.
Well, that universal God, you can't play with God. You can't go against um, the true nature of what you should be about. I mean, this is wrong, and I know everyone is entitled to their day in court. But from what people are saying and what the transcripts say, you know, this lady was not fully aware of what was going on, from what I understand. Am I wrong?
That's a claim. You know,
Mm-hmm.
now, you know, in Mr. Parker's testimony, you know, his feeling was that she was completely down for it, that she knew that his roommate was there. The roommate contended at the time that she was even flirting with him when she came over. You know, the other testimony was saying, no, this woman was too inebriated to do anything. And there was actually a third person that Mr. Parker waved into the room to try and let him get some. And he walked away. He left the apartment because he didn't want any part of it. And he was quoted as saying he told John Celestin, like, no, you don't want to go in that room. You know, so you know, whatever was an ugly turn of events, that one decision, whatever was going through Nate's mind at the time, whether to either to have sex with this woman or to try and bring his friend in on the action, it definitely was something that was a moment that changed everyone's life. Where's Conspiracy Brother?
Conspiracy brother, what do you think?
All right, so now is this a form of modern day lynching of this black man? I mean, like there are a lot of people that feel like, okay, well, if we were to trust what Nate Parker's saying, that this is a woman who consensually had sex and then the day after had regrets, and and that this happens all the time, especially when you're talking about white women on college campuses with black men. Conspiracy Brother.
Well, well, yeah, they always want to blame the brother when they get caught. But I can tell you, Nate Parker ain't going to get the same justice or the same leeway of a Roman Polanski or Woody Allen. Just ain't going to happen.
I mean, so then the other question is, in terms of redemption. I mean, this is something that happened 17 years ago. Clearly, you know, you're not the same person that you were 17 years ago. I'm not the same person that I was 17 years ago. You know, he's out here making great work that's being applauded worldwide. You know, should we just see it in the light of this is a man who's grown and matured from that horrible experience that happened to him?
You know, this is the tragedy of it. No one knows for sure what happened. And from what you see of Nate Parker, you see someone who, since that time, he's appeared to be a very upstanding, conscientious man. But this is going to hurt him, and that's the dichotomy. That's the dilemma. That's the tragedy of it all. You know, what you do has consequences, and yes, everyone is entitled to redemption. But the sad thing about this is that a woman's life was lost as a consequence of it. That you would have hoped maybe there was some way they could have helped this woman deal with it, and maybe there were some things that happened after the rape that made it even worse, where they didn't allow her to come to grips with this situation, and then it just was something that she could no longer bear, and it ended in suicide. That's the real tragedy of it.
I want to take a break now, and when we come back, we'll be joined with filmmaker Carmen Ellie Wilkerson, who has a very important short film that's winning awards across the country and showing in festivals around the country that deals with a very similar situation called The Reunion. So we'll be right back with more Reelblack podcast. With us on the line, we have filmmaker Carmen Ellie Wilkerson, who has a film that sort of deals with the issue of, I guess, date rape or acquaintance rape. I mean, how would you describe it?
My film is called The Reunion, and it's a short film about four teenagers the morning after a party. And what has happened at the party is that one of the girls got intoxicated and passed out, and she wakes up the next morning and finds out that she was sexually assaulted. So the movie starts off in the morning, and the girls discuss the game plan. What do they do? Do they call the police? Do they tell their parents, or do they keep the secret?
Right.
So that's essentially
the
movie.
And we screened it here in Philly. It's screened all over the country, Urban World Film Festival. You're just coming back from a screening now.
I'm coming back from Hollywood. The Chinese Theater showed at the Holly Shorts 12th Annual Film Festival. 2 weeks ago, it was at the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival, where it got great reviews. Something kind of cool happened, but I won't say it until I'll announce it when it happens. But there were some good people there that saw it and wanted to get out more. I am in the process I'm on the fourth draft of the feature film, and hope to have that out and shoot hopefully this year in 2016.
Right, and I wanted to have you on this podcast because there's a scene. The scene in the film is very close to the way they're depicting the Nate Parker situation, and Charles and I, we could talk all day about this issue, but I don't think it's fair to discuss issues where we're talking about rape without a woman's perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take on this whole Nate Parker situation?
Well, it's disturbing. It's always disturbing to hear about anyone who was unconscious and had, this happened to them, that, they were sexually assaulted. Now, I don't know the details in the case. I mean, obviously, I wasn't one of the jurors. I don't know what happened. Nate was exonerated. That's correct.
Nice.
And then I think it was his roommate or his friend, I think, was convicted. Is that correct? Do I have my facts straight?
Yes. Because there was some prior sexual contact between Mr. Parker and the victim. She didn't consent to full intercourse, but she gave him oral sex in a previous date.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's just craziness going outside. Yeah. So yeah, Nate Parker got off basically because there was some prior sexual contact between he and the victim. It's under debate whether she was fully unconscious. Like I think he had the sense, like he claims, from reading the transcripts and things, that he didn't really realize that she was drunk. Apparently, she had like 5 or 6 sex on the beaches and a few other drinks before he came to meet her at this nightclub, and he took her home, and they proceeded to have intercourse. And then what her recollection is that um, she was going in and out of consciousness, and then she saw this other guy who wasn't Nate on top of her, and then
Mhm.
later there was a recording that she made to try and get him to confess, where he said, well, it didn't seem to me that you were unconscious, because how could you be giving oral sex to my friend if you were unconscious?
I will say this: if she had 5 or 6 drinks and she was a young girl, there's a very good chance that she was not able to make a decision
Hmm.
that was clear and that was consensual. I think that, and the law says that now. The law now, because I do think, I don't know how many years ago this was, the law now is that if someone has had a certain amount of alcohol, just like a certain amount of alcohol driving, uh, there's you cannot get consent anymore. So if you're at a bar and a girl has had 2 or 3 drinks, and she says to you, she wants to have sex or whatever, blood alcohol levels are going to be taken. Okay, so you know, again, if she's had a lot to drink, and I think in college girls are, can be reckless with the
Hmm.
drinking. Let's face it. She probably was so inebriated she didn't know what she was doing.
Hmm.
You know, um, in general, not all men, but in general, guys usually look at that as a ripe situation. They look at that as, oh wow, well she's going to be a little easier tonight to get the panties because she's all messed up.
Hmm.
That is not a situation where many guys walk away from. Many guys will think that's an opportunity. I'm not saying that's what Nate did,
Right.
okay? Because I don't know. I mean, really, let's face it, the only people that really know are the people that were there.
Hmm.
And I think that's the gray area with this. I think that's why a lot of times, 97% of the time, the guys are not held accountable. Even in the Stanford case, okay, this guy, they had just, mounds of evidence
Hmm.
against this guy, and he only got 3 months in jail. So even when someone has seen the body is unconscious and a man takes advantage, it's still in the place where, you won't go to jail. It's not considered a complete crime
Right.
because he says, that's what he said. His defense was, she gave consent.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's face it. If someone is that drunk, they can't give consent. So how this relates to Nate and to, his movie and all that, it definitely gives me pause. I was very anxious to see that movie
Hmm.
because of, the subject matter and, I have followed his career and I think he's a good actor. And now it feels like, wow, am I going to be one of those people who just, because I want to be entertained, I'm going to look the other way? I mean, our society does that a lot. So, our society, and I'm not sure why, we call ourselves a civilized society, and yet when it comes to the treatment of women, we are way behind the times, if you ask me.
Well,
I do find it troubling. I'll say that.
I wanted to bring Charles into the conversation. Yeah, I mean, why do you think this is happening now? And is is it possible that he's redeemed himself? Is this something that he's always going to have to live down?
It's troubling because of the situation. I have daughters, and I hate to hear this kind of stuff. And this to surround an actor who's been well respected and have his biggest film coming out. Now this controversy comes up when it hasn't come up before. In his defense, the same way they defend people have some way of trying to defend what's surrounding Bill Cosby. There's always conspiracy theories where you know what actually happened or what happened is kind of pushed to the side because people are thinking that it's not really about what happened as much as it is about trying to hurt someone because of the, in this case, the content of the film and how they don't really want the film to have any success. And that's the tragedy.
Well, if they were looking for fodder, they got it.
Yes.
Because I think as a female, hearing that story, you're horrified. And the woman committed suicide? I mean, it's the stakes are just so high. You can't just brush this off and say, oh, well, she said, she gave consent. Obviously a woman who, is going to take her own life was severely traumatized by this. And that's what's at stake. That is exactly what's at stake. And it bothers me when I hear anyone, man, woman, anyone, take it lightly. Oh, she wanted it. Oh, no, women don't, unless someone is a professional, for the most part, women don't want to be raped when they're unconscious. That's not something we want. So for Nate to defend that she was just a little tipsy is, again, I haven't heard his whole complete statement. Right. I did hear that he's very upset that when he heard that the woman had committed suicide.
Right. Well, Carmen.
But
I mean,
yes.
Yeah. One of the things, your film. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this. You've shown it all over the country, and I know it's a personal story for you, but clearly when you share it with people, more it becomes you become more aware of how common it happens, especially on college campuses.
Absolutely. Every screening I've had women come up to me afterwards, whisper, or some very proudly say, "Yep, it happened to me too." It's more prevalent than what anyone knows. In my situation, I wasn't in college. A college situation is probably 10 times worse. You know what I mean? Because you have, most colleges you can drink legally, so you have many people participating in alcohol consumption. I mean, it's rampant. It's rampant. Most women don't tell anyone about it, but it's rampant. There's a very good chance that, and someone said this to me as it related to my film, they said, I think every woman knows someone that's happened to or happened to her. So it's something that touches practically every female. And I've heard some strong comments from men about it. I think most men are decent and would never touch a girl who's that inebriated. But a lot of men do see it as an opportunity. And the mere fact that he says she was only a little tipsy, I mean, that's concerning to me. 5 drinks is more than what most women can handle.
Right. And Charles, let me just throw some numbers. If you're talking conspiracy theory, there's definitely some karma in effect. If you were to ask me, after the trial or after the accusation, I should say, Nate Parker and some of his friends on the wrestling team hired a private detective to go out and basically out this woman. Like they showed her face and started to basically terrorize her to the point where she had to leave the campus. And Penn State settled with the woman, for $17,500. Now, if you look at the numbers, there's a little irony that Birth of a Nation sold
Yeah, the cost.
to Fox Searchlight for $17.5 million, and
Mm-hmm.
all this is coming back 17 years after the original event.
Yeah, I noticed that also.
Wow,
It struck me the same thing when I saw the figure.
that
So,
is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and
Now,
that's
what
what
about
happens
the?
a lot of times is the men collectively, especially like a group of men, the athletes or a fraternity, will protect their one warrior who's under attack, and how they do it is by villainizing the woman.
mhm.
And I go over that in the feature that I've written on this subject, is that, the girl is cyberbullied after the sexual assault, and because the guy thinks she might, have a different story of what happened.
Wow.
So, but that is uncanny with Nate. And personally, I don't know if it's a conspiracy. I mean, I'm not sure who benefits by this news coming out. I think, if anything, maybe a conspiracy of her family. Maybe her family wanted it to be known, because here you've got this actor, being put up on a pedestal. Maybe her family really wanted the story, but I can't understand why a studio person.
Well,
What benefit
there,
is it
there
to
are
them?
there are other films that are going to be competing for Oscars. I mean, Charles, I mean, we're talking
What
offline about
about
it.
what about the race of this woman? Has that could be a factor
She's a white
also?
woman.
Oh, okay.
She's a white woman. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, but Nate Parker, he's also married to a white woman. But yeah, that was one of the original scandals at the time that it happened, was that this is like a few months before the Sandusky thing on the campus of Penn State. So
Hmm.
there was a big issue. Like
Mm,
the two black college wrestlers are being accused of
yeah.
raping a white woman on campus. So it was big news back then, and it's definitely been a skeleton in Nate Parker's closet. That he's tried to suppress, and I think it's coming out now because there's a lot of money involved, and there's Oscars involved, and on one level, you could say, you know, not to report it would be an even bigger conspiracy, but also there are forces at work, from all the other studios that have movies that they're hoping to get Oscars, that would love to see this kind of information come out. I mean, this is not unprecedented, right, Charles? Like, movies get discredited all the time during Oscar season.
Well, usually when you have the noise come out about a particular movie, a lot of times it's inspired by the competing corporations. Same thing surrounded Denzel Washington's The Hurricane. Uh,
What
that
happened there?
film was getting a lot of kudos, and it was highly rated. And then all of a sudden, it was surrounded by controversy, and that many people felt that killed the Oscars for it. And you remember more recently what happened with Selma.
Mm.
Um, Everyone's talking Oscar, Oscar, Oscar. Then all of a sudden, this thing um, with the president and how he wasn't properly depicted in the film Johnson, and then that killed it.
Yeah. No, it's a shame. It always happens to black movies. And then Color Purple. Color
Well,
Purple.
Color Purple, the film was attacked because a lot of men felt that in literature and in cinema, they always projected the image of the black man as a brute.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, I guess it happens. As I said, I think, as as a victim, to see this guy in the public being lauded, praised, I think that would bother me as a family member, especially knowing how tortured she was afterwards. It's just a sad story. I mean, it really is. I'm sorry Nate is in, the middle of it, after all of this good news with this film. But I do feel glad I found out the information. I'm glad I know.
Now, Carmen,
Yes.
let me be clear. Your film is it based on something that happened in your personal life?
Yes, it is. It is.
Oh,
When I was 17 years old, at a party, drank too much.
oh
And see,
God.
that's what I was saying about girls and drinking. There's
Hmm.
something about the young mind, the young girl's mind that cannot handle alcohol. So you will probably see a girl impaired after one drink. So when someone says, "Oh, she only has 5," I'm like, "Oh my God, can you seriously? I can't imagine her being of her right mind." Probably after 2, she was not of her right mind. And whatever she did, I mean, we know, no one was there, but who knows what that situation was? If you have heard about some of these situations where the guys were convicted, like the Vanderbilt situation, those guys were on videotape. That's how they found out. And they tried to say the same thing. Oh, she wanted it. And it's really bad. I mean, as I said, in my situation, my movie is exactly, the situations. I remembered nothing. The next morning, my friends and my sister were all discussing what happened and what we should do. That's all I remember is the next morning. And that's what alcohol does to you. I wasn't half in it, half out. I was out. I was blacked out.
Could you
And yes,
could you speak to the part of what's important for someone who have gone through this and what it takes not to end up in suicide?
well, wow, that's so heavy. I mean, who knows, about this girl's personality before this? I mean, who knows? She might have been a depressed person before that. I don't know.
Hmm.
But obviously, telling someone it's huge. Being able to discuss it, hopefully being able to discuss it with a professional is probably the best course of action. And I would tell any person who's gone through this, and I have been over this last year, because, I did a movie about it. Yes, I did experience it, but I'm not a professional therapist. Go get help. Everyone handles things differently. When I look back on my life, wow, I was like, because I was 17, and then I went to college. My first year of college, I flunked out. I did terrible.
Mm.
And I was thinking I just wasn't a focused person. But in retrospect, I was like, oh my God, I was traumatized. I was completely traumatized. And I wasn't of the right mind where I would say, I didn't tell my mother or anything. I didn't go to some therapist. I was trying to handle it on my own. And when I really look back at my life, I could see all these effects of it. I've had issues with depression. I've had issues with, just sometimes not being able to focus to the point where, it affects my work and it affects what I do. So I can see all of these after effects. And I know that girl, and I have to admit, nobody knew in my case. I cannot imagine the level of humiliation that everyone knew, and everyone is judging you and calling you names.
Yes.
I did not have that layer of humiliation. So, and that's what happens these days. Is you got the internet, and you got Twitter, where people are are ruining you. Ruining you in good name. So she had a different level of exposure.
Yeah, they said.
And I just prayed. I'm sorry?
They said that she had struggled for years. I think she had a psychotic break, and at one point she thought she was God, or she thought other people were God, and she was the devil, and she just.
And this was after the rape?
10 years after the rape. She started
Wow.
having all these different things happen, and it's got to be really difficult when they refuse to do a second trial, and in the meantime he's getting more and more famous and more appreciated. But then
she was tortured. I mean, that's just torture to know that you went through that level of humiliation. People look at you as the bad guy, and watching him ascend. She was, that's horrible.
So I guess the last question for both of you would be, I mean, is it possible to separate the art from the person? Is it okay for us to process the work separately from something that happened? I mean, and he, he clearly, I would imagine, I mean, there hasn't been any other cases that we know about that he is a changed person. This is something that happened when he was a young man. It's kind of ironic that the co-writer of the script would be the, quote unquote partner in crime, but I mean, how do you separate the work from the person, or can you?
Okay. Can you separate it? Knowing what I know now, no, I can't separate it. It's information that I have. Let's say it like this. I will probably see the movie, okay? Mm-hmm. Will I go into it, feeling Nate is, worthy of praise for his work? His work as a director? Sure. If it's a good movie, I'll say it's a good movie. As a person, as the man, I do feel differently about him now. And I don't want to judge anyone because I don't want anyone to judge me. But I do think that actions mean a lot. I've heard, character impugnment of people from Woody Allen to Roman Polanski, and I have to admit, I have seen those movies, and I've just judged the movie. But maybe that's not right. I mean, it does have me thinking, if someone has done something so wrong that it offends me, maybe I shouldn't support their art. Maybe I shouldn't support it. So it's something I'm introspective about.
Mm-hmm. And Charles?
Well, it's for me. I don't like what was done. This, for me, scars my thinking of Nate Parker. But I think what he should do is commit himself to addressing this and to getting the message out that no one should do what he did. And at the time it happened, he was thinking one thing, but as Carmen pointed out, the thinking has changed a great deal. It's always the women who are the most vulnerable. They take the most heat. They always the character is assassinated. The men get away with these acts, and I think Nate Parker should take a strong stance in making it known that no one should be in that position where a woman is vulnerable, not fully aware of her senses, and take advantage of her. It's not right. And he should commit himself to getting that message out. The same way he's making a film. Go ahead, Carmen.
I agree with you. I think that would go a long way to healing, some of the wounds that have been opened because of this.
Yes.
And even the woman who wrote that 12-page Stanford letter, the gist of what she was saying is, you never even said you were sorry. You never apologized. You never showed any remorse. And I think that women in this situation do want people to feel something. Don't just say it was the woman's fault. If Nate came out and showed some type of remorse, I don't know what, but because I'm sure he's got a lot of publicists and people that are trying to, to structure any statement. But some genuine emotion about it would go a long way for me.
Yes.
Right now, those excuses of she seemed fine to me is just not enough.
Well, I think in some ways the karma is coming back to him, and the irony's not lost on me. So, it's unfortunate. I mean, I will support the film. I do want to see it. I think, this is something that Charles and I always talk about. Like, we're always talking about these slave narratives and movies about slavery, and then when the movie about the slave rebellion comes out, this information comes out that kind of tarnishes it. I still want to support the film. I do want to see what it says, but I would not be upset if it gets ignored when the awards come. I think that that would be the twist of irony that's called for from this. But
Yeah.
but he should also.
Well,
I don't think he's going to address it because he was acquitted in a court of law. And his partner did a little bit of time. So I feel like they paid their debt to society, and that this is old news, and they don't really want to address it. But in terms of just
yeah.
the human thing, it's something. I think a lot of people have skeletons in their closet, things that they regret, things that if when they were older they would have changed. And I think the irony is, if these two gentlemen were tried with effective justice at the time, it's possible that this film would have never seen the light of day, or their lives would have taken a
Yeah.
different path.
Well, when you look at the statistics, as I said, 97% of the guys associated with these cases are they're never found guilty, or their sentence is so light that it's essentially a slap on the hand. Okay, so something is broken in our system. Something is not right, and Joe Biden just said that, after the Stanford letter that he read. He said something is wrong in our society because we are not treating our women with the same equal rights as we would want to be treated if something bad like this happened to us, to men.
Mm-hmm.
So even when I hear that he was acquitted, well, of course he was acquitted. It's kind of like in the Deep South in the 50s. The guy who killed Emmett Till was acquitted. Of course he was acquitted. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised he was acquitted. That's not surprising because these guys never get punished.
Right. So, and I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm saying he had some privilege that afforded him that, but I feel that karma's coming back. I mean, this is something that you certain things you do.
I would agree. And I hope, because the article I read, he said he did not know. He just recently found out that the woman had committed suicide. Mm-hmm. So I think he's probably in his own, private level of atonement. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got to feel something. If he's a human being, he's got to feel something about the fact that this woman who he helped vilify publicly, succumb to the pressure in that way. That's why I would like to see him address it in some fashion.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. But Hollywood is not without scandal, and folks generally are protected. I think like back in the day, Clark Gable killed a person with his car. But that's something you never found out about because they had people covering up for things. But in this day of social media, everybody's stuff comes out. He's definitely gonna have to speak to this before this movie opens, and I'm not sure how they justify it, but
yeah, he doesn't want to get women groups, picketing and stuff like that, because there's some pretty strong women lobbies on this subject matter of late, and he just wants to make sure he's got to address it, and if he ignores it, he's going to find himself embroiled in controversy closer to the time of Oscar season. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, to me, if he goes ahead and addresses it now, then I think he might, he might do okay. But if he waits until November, December, it's going to get ugly, because I think you're right. Then it becomes competition, and everyone has a investment in making sure that the box office doesn't look good, that the critics don't, know all this. And
Well,
Did you kill it?
he has it addressed in a Facebook post, and then
He can forget about an Oscar. I'll tell
Yeah,
you
but
that. There's no way that film's going to get an Oscar behind this. No way, shape, or form.
yeah, I think
well, I mean,
it's
there's
done.
so many reasons. It's probably not going to get an Oscar. You know, for the most part, Oscars don't love movies that make the white man look like a villainous. But it's a great story, and that's what makes me want to see it. It's because it's a great story. If, as I said, if this controversy hadn't popped up, I would have been the first in line. And now, I would actually really think hard and long about supporting Nate. And that's why I say I really need to know beyond his Facebook post how he's going to address it. And I really do think he needs to.
Yeah, Oprah, you gotta come out of retirement, do that one-on-one
Yeah.
with Nate Parker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you taking
Well,
taking the time. Any final thoughts on this topic?
I'd like to ask Carmen one quick question.
yes.
Has your film in a way been therapeutic for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I have never, before this film, I never publicly said this. And in fact, it was interesting because, I had initially written it as a one-act play, and we never ended up doing the one-act play, so I put it away for years, and then when I picked it back up, I said, yeah, this looks cheap to shoot. And then I had this recognition that, wait a minute, I might have to talk about this. And I got afraid. But I have to admit, it's been amazing to talk about it because so many other people come up to me and say, oh, wow, that happened to me too. I was just telling Michael that when I came out of the screening just now, these two white women ran up to me and said, where can we we want to see your film, we want to show your film to our 12-year-old daughters.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They said, where can we see it? Where can we see it? Is it online or, where can we see it? And I told them, I said, first of all, thank you for being good enough parents to not be afraid to approach this subject with your kids. Because just last week I had a 14-year-old, her father said, no, she can't see the movie. She's not ready for it yet. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, in high school, it's whether you think or not, kids are drinking, these things are happening, and you just have to educate. So the whole education and awareness part of it is just making my heart sing. It really is. I mean, if this film can make a difference with even a handful of people, I feel as though I've done something good. Because you see what's at stake. This case with Nate and this girl tells you what's at stake.
Yes.
And it's big. It's big.
Where can people find out more about the film and find out more about you?
Well, we have a website, thereunionshortfilm.com. There's a Facebook page. I think you have to go under The Reunion, a film by Carmen Ellie Wilkerson. I also have a web page. Very soon, I'm going to have the film with a distribution channel. I'm still working on that. It's been kind of hard with me writing the feature and trying to make those deadlines. But I do want it to be distributed at colleges and in general, probably online somewhere. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. If you go to our website or go to my website, CarmenEllieWilkerson.net, you can find out where to see it all.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
To talk with us about it. We'll be back with more Reelblack Podcast.